Hi, my name is Ian Coldwater, and as is traditional among computer folks in New Beginnings, this talk is called Hello World. This talk is dedicated to everybody who is new to information security, people who are not information security yet who are interested in it, and whoever happened to click on this link by mistake. Hello to you, hello world. Welcome, truly. Welcome to IntersecCon, welcome to information security. You are welcome here. You belong here. Yes, you, the person who thinks that they might not belong here. Maybe because you don't necessarily see yourself represented. Maybe because you think you're too old and it's too late, or you're too young and nobody will take you seriously, or maybe you are underrepresented in some other way. You, whoever you are, you do belong in information security. We really haven't solved security yet, and we need all the help we can get. And one thing that we really need is diverse voices and diverse perspectives, because we don't necessarily have as many of those as we ought to. And with more diverse voices and perspectives, we can get more and better ideas that can help us along. We need your voice and your perspectives. So hi, welcome, you belong. My name is Ian. This low resolution picture, in which I'm wearing really silly looking pants, is the day that I graduated from coding boot camp. I spent most of coding boot camp hiding behind my hair. A good thing about having big hair is that you can cry behind it, and having a lot of feelings about never being able to make it in tech. I had been told all my life that girls like me would never amount to anything. I had kids when I was really young. I've done a lot of things in my life kind of off script, and had been told my whole life that I was a fuck up and a failure, assumed I was a fuck up and a failure, and spent most of boot camp convinced that I was unemployable and having a lot of feelings about it. As it turns out, all of that was complete bullshit. And if you are somebody who has been told that you'll never amount to anything, and especially if you are somebody who has come to believe it, you should know that that's complete bullshit for you too, because that's not real. And for me, I have a lot of regrets, but mostly about how much of that I internalized and how much I got in my own way. And so it's become really important to me since to try to talk specifically to people who might not see themselves represented, who might feel like they don't belong, because you do. And I want people not to feel like I did. So I got a lot of help and had a lot of really good friends coming up in tech in Minnesota, and slowly learned that the feelings I had about myself were not necessarily true. And now I'm dedicated to helping do that for others, to help pay that forward, and to have other folks believe that they can do it, and to have other folks be able to succeed and do it too. So this picture of me looking like an awkward dork is from my first meetup talk. I didn't really feel like that was a thing that I could do, but I got encouraged by really good folks. So that's me looking like I'm feeling really awkward. And as it turns out, it turned out all right. People really liked it. There were 150 people at that meetup. It was the biggest meetup in Minnesota at the time. And a lot of folks in town were there. And they liked the talk, as it turned out. And then I got invited to start speaking at conferences after that. So this is a little bit of like, not trying to make the whole thing about myself, but just like, here's a little bit of the path that I took. So did my first meetup talk, and pretty quickly after that, I got invited to do my first conference talk. Or really I got invited to submit, and I put in a CFP, which was terrible. And it got accepted anyway, somewhat to my surprise. And then I had a talk to give, and then I had more talks to give. And so I kind of kept striving and worked my butt off and kept doing it. And then that got bigger. This was the first talk I did on a large local stage. There were 951 people in the audience. I'm talking about container breakouts. I didn't have sparkly boots yet. And eventually the stages got bigger, and then they got really, really big. That talk was at KubeCon this year in front of 10,000 people. So I went in the space of a few years from feeling like I could never amount to anything whatsoever and that I was just doomed to do that, to actually finding out that I could amount to a lot. And you can too. So how did I get into security though? That's Talks, that's not the same. Talks was one way, but what I did was I started out a DevOps engineer, and then I got a job. I had a job as like an IT team of one, in which I did all of the security, all of the devs, all of the ops, wrangling my shitty legacy code base, which was absolutely horrendously bad, trying to secure it, trying to do all the things. And I don't really recommend getting a job as a one-person IT team. I definitely got some gray hairs coming out of that and didn't sleep for a while. But one thing it did allow me to do was put my fingers in all of the pies a little bit and figure out what I liked to do. And I think that's one of the things that I really want to emphasize to folks who are wanting to get into security, is that it's important to know what it is that you want to do. And one way to do that is to get your hands dirty. You can get your hands dirty at work, like I did. You can get your hands dirty by playing capture the flag games. You can, you know, kind of play with stuff on your own. You can study in school. There's lots of different avenues, but really do kind of figure out what it is that you want to do, because there's lots of different paths to take. One of them is through DevOps or through development or through other forms of IT, like I did. One of them is through school. One of them is being self-taught and doing stuff yourself. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. And it's important to know that not everything is going to work for everybody. And what worked for me isn't necessarily going to work for you. But it's also important to know that it isn't necessarily not going to work for you. And so it's worth trying. And one thing that's important to know also is that security is an enormously wide field, so big. There's so many different things that you can do in this field. And so the first thing that you should do if you're trying to figure out how to get into security is to figure that out. Do you want to do offensive security? Do you want to do defensive security? Do you want to do stuff related to code? Do you want to do kind of risk compliance governance stuff? That is a valid path. Do you want to do forensics or malware analysis or any number of other things? All of those are options, and all of those might have different study paths and different paths into a career in those things. So I would say try a little bit of everything and then figure out what you want and what you don't want. In my experience, if you don't want it, you will often figure that out pretty quickly, like, oh, I hate this. And if you do want it, maybe you'll figure out immediately, and maybe you'll be like, this seems okay. And then you can keep going with it. For me, I can't claim that the way in which I blew up was accidental. I can say that I'm really lucky, because I think that that's true. And I can say that I had a lot of support from my friends and family, because I think that that's also true. But I started out that IT team of one. From there, after building an entire pipeline from scratch, that company restructured. I got laid off from it. And then I got a job as a DevOps engineer with this resume, having built a build pipeline by myself, where they were like, wait, what? You did what? And I was like, I had these kind of problems I wanted to solve, and I built this wacky thing in like a really non-standard way with the knowledge that I had available to me at the time. But, you know, I don't know, I did this thing. And they were like, where did you learn that? And I was like, I don't know, I just figured it out. And they were like, we're going to hire you. So they did. And then I was a DevOps engineer. And as I got hired, I had made it very clear to the people who were hiring me that I was interested in security. And they knew that from the jump. One of the way that I actually met the hiring manager at that job was I was at a conference called DevOps Days. It's a DevOps conference, talking to a group of strangers, and then made some fairly irresponsible jokes about leaving dead drop USBs on the sponsor tables. And one of the people who I was having this conversation with cracked up laughing, and we got to talking about security and like what I had been doing. And at the end of that, when I had been talking about that and then what I had been doing at work, he was the hiring manager. And he was like, I'm going to hire you. And then he did. So sometimes talking to strangers can be good. So he knew I was interested in security from the get-go. I got in there and I was told that they were early adopters of this new technology that I was sort of familiar with-ish because I had been doing container work when I was doing DevOps work, but like before that, when I was building out those pipelines, but I hadn't really played with much. I had played with a little bit. They were early adopters of a technology called Kubernetes, and Kubernetes was weird back then. Nobody had really heard of it much, especially in security. It was just not a thing at all. And they were like, we're doing this thing. We know you're interested in security. We'd like to put it into production. Can you help? And I was like, yeah, of course. And they were like, can you break it? And I was like, I don't know, maybe I could try. Challenge accepted. And as it turned out, I could break it. And it was fun. And I really liked it. And then I kept going with it. And it started out weird. And then it got big. And I had a feeling that it might. I like emerging tech. I like doing new stuff and kind of forging new territory where people haven't really been before. And that's kind of a thing that's exciting to me. And not everybody likes that. Some people really like maintaining legacy systems or dealing with things that are really old. Everybody's different. So again, choose your own adventure. My path isn't necessarily going to be yours. I had a feeling Kubernetes might get big. And I was like, I want to get good at this. I think if I get good at this, this can be a thing that I can take and run with. And then I could. So if you have instincts like that, sometimes they're good. I'm not going to tell you it's always going to pay off, but it might, because Kubernetes got big. And then that was the thing I knew about. And that was pretty cool. So again, let's stop talking about myself. I'm gonna start talking about you some more. Figure out what you want to do. Security is huge. What is it that you want? What are you interested in? What do you want your career to look like? You can plan this out, even if it feels like you can't and you're unemployable and you'll never amount to anything. In my experience, it's actually the case that you might want to plan for it anyway, just in case, as a thought experiment, because sometimes these things can happen anyway, and if you haven't planned for them, you might be surprised and have wanted to have planned earlier than you did. Once you figure out what you want to do, learn how it works. What is it that you want to do? How does that work exactly? And I don't necessarily mean how do the, like, if you're using tools, figure out how the tools work, and then figure out why the tools work, and figure out how, whatever it is that you're into, figure out how it figure out how it works under the hood. You want to go deep with it, and you want to do it well. A lot of the time, advice to newer pen testers, and pen testing really is not the only field in information security, I promise. Also, pen testing involves far more reporting than you've probably led to believe. It's a lot of the time they'll be like, okay, in order to hack things, in order to pen test, here's a list of tools for you. And they won't necessarily provide context for those tools. They won't necessarily say like what the tools are used for, why you might want to use them, why those tools might be really inappropriate for that use case. A lot of the time you just have this contextless list, but that's actually pretty unhelpful. So understand your use case, understand when and how those tools might be useful for it or not. And then understand the fundamentals up to kind of like the deeper things about whatever it is that you're into. And that's the case, whatever it is that you're into. If you're into malware, if you're into Windows, if you're into Linux or containers, any of that, really understand how it works. And put in the work for it. There really aren't any shortcuts. There are no cheat codes. It's important to really to really dedicate yourself to this. And that doesn't mean that you have to work 24/7. And it doesn't mean that work-life balance isn't important, but it's, but also like, you're gonna have to spend some time learning. And that's not always going to feel easy because it's hard to be new. It's hard to feel like you suck at things. And we talk about imposter syndrome, and imposter syndrome is real. But also sometimes what we refer to as imposter syndrome is just the experience of being new. And it's okay to be new, and it's okay to learn. And you should know, as somebody who's new and learning, that you actually probably know more than you think, because you're not coming into information security from scratch. Wherever it is that you're coming from, no matter what your background is, you're bringing the skills and experience and knowledge that you have from that background. You're taking it and you're bringing it into information security with you. Those skills, experience, and knowledge are valuable. Don't sell that short. Don't sell yourself short. And don't forget that. Don't forget that you have that skills and knowledge and experience, that you know more than perhaps you feel like you know. Don't forget to take some time to not keep your head in books and to maybe go outside and smell flowers or something sometimes. And don't forget to stay human, because we aren't actually computers. And it's important to like stay in touch with your own humanity, with your family and friends, and with the rest of your life outside tech. They say, you know, all work and no play makes whoever a dull person. Sometimes that's true. It can often make somebody a really depressed, anxious person, and that isn't necessarily what you want. So don't forget to try to balance stuff. I'm not always great at this, but I do try. And I'm going to be real. The information security community is mostly really great. It's mostly full of really good people who are dedicated to sharing knowledge and to helping one another. But not everybody is super awesome all the time. So if you run into people who are jerks, who tell you that you can't do stuff, who tell you that you're a noob in a bad way, and that, you know, you being new means something bad about you, those people are often insecure and unhappy. And it doesn't mean that that's an excuse, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't suck to hear it from them, but don't let the bastards get you down. Keep your eyes on the prize. It's going to be okay. Remember that most people in the community are really good, and look for those folks. Look for the helpers and be one of them. It's and start doing this early. It's really important to give back to the community, because the community will give a lot to you. And when you give to the community, people will see that and people will recognize it. Sometimes I get asked by people who are interested in getting into information security, what do I need to get into InfoSec? Do I need certs? Do I need a degree? Do I need kind of this pre-existing set of letters or anything, credentials or anything else? Not necessarily. A lot of the time, what you need to get into InfoSec is for somebody to give you a chance. And a lot of the time, the ways that you can get that, we talk about networking, and networking is artificial and weird, but really what networking is just people getting to know one another and making connections. It's easier to make those connections when you are out there. And it's easier, I mean, relatively speaking, I guess out there is sort of weird right now, but if you become known as somebody who is interested, who is curious, who is invested in giving back to the community and in helping people, people will see that, people will notice it, and they'll make connections with you accordingly. And that can be helpful in terms of getting into InfoSec too. There's lots of different avenues, lots of different paths. And one of them, a big one, has to do with the people in InfoSec. So find those people, find the community, and then give back to it. Start that early. Find your friends. It's not always going to be easy. Working really hard isn't always going to be easy. Being new and learning is kind of hard. And sometimes, as I said, people can be jerks. And one way that we can all get through that is by getting through it together. And one way that we can get through that is finding folks who will support you, finding your crew. It's good. People can help you get through stuff together, and you can do projects together, and that's pretty sweet. I like co-presenting a lot. I do co-present a lot because it's fun to work with your friends and do cool stuff with them. And remember to be the person you needed, especially if you are somebody who got told when you were coming up that you couldn't do it. Be a person who tells other people that they can do it. If what you needed was for somebody to give you a chance, for somebody to like see the humanity in you, for somebody to see all the things that you had to teach, as well as all the things you had to learn, give that to other people. Be that person for other folks, because as you do that, other people will become inspired to do that. And then you can see the ripple effects going out, which is pretty great. And make sure to lift as you climb. As you become more successful, as you grow, make sure that you are leaving those paths open for other people. Make sure that you're clearing those paths for other people, because we can all become better together. We are the ones we've been waiting for. There's no one else out there who's like coming to save us. It isn't that the people who are already in information security know all the things. I promise the people who are already in information security do not know all the things. It can be easy sometimes to feel like other people do. If you see folks on social media who seem like they know everything, that can feel really intimidating. But honestly, no one knows everything. Everybody has gaps in their knowledge. And if you come and bring your skills, your knowledge, your ideas, your perspectives with you into InfoSec, and then share it with other people, share that knowledge with other people who will in turn share that knowledge with you and their perspectives with you. We can all learn together. We can all skill up together. We can all grow together. And that's a really beautiful thing. And that can make information security better. It can make the community better. Frankly, it can make us better. Remember, every one of us has something to teach and something to learn. That means you, really, you, the person I'm talking to right now. And perhaps burn this motherfucker to the ground. You got this. I believe in you. Believe in yourself too. I'm really excited for IntroSecCon. I'm really excited for you to be here. This is going to be awesome. Thank y'all so much for getting up early in the morning to take the time to be with me. And thank you so much for bringing your awesome self and your voice and your perspective to information security. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I couldn't stop smiling during that talk. That was so great. I think just seeing the responses we have in Discord and just the conversation that's happening around this right now is awesome, and people feeling welcome. And I saw some people say that they've never seen this side of information security. So it is wonderful that you have shared this talk with us. I see people in Discord saying I needed this talk. So that hits me here. That's so good. Yeah, so during your talk, you were talking about lifting other people up, and I think that's awesome. We have that opportunity here. We have that opportunity at our workplaces. Like, we have people who might be juniors, or they're not even in InfoSec yet. They're just starting out in IT, and we have the opportunity to lift them up. Just out of curiosity, what are some of the ways that you've done that personally to like kind of boost people and give some people ideas of what they might be able to do?
Oh, well, once upon a time, somebody said they might be interested in a conference topic, and I was like, hey.
Oh my gosh, that's wild.
I think so. Some other things I've done is I got tired of being the only female assigned person in the CTF room most of the time. So I wanted to see more people who looked like me in there, and I wanted to have more people who looked like me feel like they could have a place in there and see themselves represented there. So I started a CTF team called CTF Circle for people who aren't men to come in and play CTFs both in real life and online together. And CTF Circle has, I think it has hundreds of people in it now. I don't even know how many people it has in it now, who are globally distributed, who play CTFs together. And it has become a community in which not only do people learn new skills by playing CTFs, by studying stuff together, they've also, helped each other negotiate their salaries. They've, helped each other get through life stuff, and they have, made friends and taken it so much farther beyond where I dreamed it could go. And that's been really beautiful and inspiring to see. It's, if you see an opportunity or a need, you can step up and create that for people. That is a thing that none of us need permission to do. We can just do that. Find your friends, do that. Individuals don't scale super well necessarily, but you don't need to ask for permission. If there's something that you want to see happen, you can just do that. And knowing that is really empowering, and helping show other people that is really empowering too. So thank you also for helping show other people that, because that's rad.
Awesome. I'm just trying to see if we have any other questions in Discord. Is there a good source that helps break down various fields in InfoSec? I have an idea of what I want to do when I graduate, but I want to know.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Video lag.
Leslie Carhart, who goes by hacks4pancakes on Twitter, has a really amazing series of blog posts that came out a few years ago called Starting an InfoSec Career, the Megamix. It's a series, there are several of them, and it actually breaks down the different fields within information security, talks about what those day-to-day job descriptions might look like, talks about what possible study paths might be to get into those different parts of the field. And I have not, it's a few years old. It's incredibly useful. I send it to everybody who asks me this question. I have not attempted to replicate it because there's no need. It's great. And I recommend looking that one up. If you look up Starting an InfoSec Career, the Megamix, it's hers. It's fantastic.
And just so everybody knows, I dropped a link to that in the Discord track one, so you can go check that out. I highly recommend it too. That's kind of what helped me get some focus, because I was like, learn all the things. I'm gonna be a wizard. And then I was like, that's not possible.
I should have said that in the talk, honestly. Like, it's really important to know that there is really just too much for one person to do everything. And trying to do that is a great way to burn yourself out and drive yourself completely mad. And so, you know, it's good to like try to have some sort of plan of what you want to focus on. And that doesn't necessarily need to be the same plan you stick with. Maybe you decide that that thing isn't everything you wanted it to be, and that there's something else you really want to do, and that's totally fine. But I do recommend not running around chasing your own tail all the time, because information security is such a wide field that you just literally can't. And I don't mean that for it to be discouraging, because I don't necessarily think it has to be. I think it's a matter of like knowing yourself, knowing what works for you, and then doing that, you know, like, and if you don't really know yourself or what works for you yet, trying a lot of things, figuring that out, and then taking that and running with it.
Yeah, definitely. So another good question we have, and we can kind of go back and forth on this one if we want. Where do you recommend finding a good mentor?
Oh gosh, that's a fantastic question.
Yeah.
I have had formal mentors and I have had informal mentors, and both of those were awesome, and both of those work. I have been an informal mentor for people. I've never actually made a formal mentor thing work. It'd be interesting, possibly. No, wait, yes, I have. That was terrible, actually. But I'm not going to say that that was terrible all the time, just that it was terrible the time that I did it for reasons. So I think, actually, no, I maybe will expand upon that a little bit. I didn't set up that mentor program. I sort of tried to plug myself into it when I was newer, and it wasn't a format that really worked for me very well. So I will say, if you are trying to do some sort of formal mentorship thing, make sure that it is in a format that works for you, and make sure that you are dedicating yourself to mentoring people who you work well with. Because if you are just like, I'm going to join the mentorship program right now and slot myself into this slot, neither of those things might not necessarily be the case. So since then, I don't always think those are bad. I just think you want to be careful with them, because being a mentor is like being a friend, or, you know, or finding anything else where you want to have a good relationship with somebody, kind of both in terms of a working relationship and in terms of a human relationship. And so, you know, a lot of the stuff I've done since then has been more kind of informal, of like, hey, I like you, and I think you're going places, and like, it's, you know, like, I really want to like help share this information with you, because that, you know, feels important and good to me, and maybe it can be helpful to you. And that can look any number of ways. But I think, you know, that's coming from a mentor end. How do you find a mentor? I would say one strategy that doesn't work super well is to cold write to somebody, especially somebody who probably gets a lot of correspondence, and say, hi, can you mentor me? especially, and just leave it at that, because mentorship can mean any number of things, and that is sort of what that looks like for you and that other person is up to you two to figure out. But as a general wide ask, it's such a wide ask that you don't necessarily know who that person is, what it is that they're trying to go for, like what their goals are, what they want out of a mentor. And that isn't necessarily going to work super well for you. I would say the way to find mentors is to make connections with people who work in the fields or the subfields that you want to work in, with people who you admire, with people who you just think are cool. And a lot of that is just making connections with other people. One thing when I was talking about giving back to community is volunteering at conferences is great. Volunteering to help set up or run CTFs is fantastic. Like volunteering to, do various kinds of community structured things is a good way to give back to the community. It's a good use of your time. But if you're volunteering at a conference, one thing that can also happen is if you're volunteering at a conference that has speakers you admire, a lot of the time you're going to be able to run into and talk to the speakers. And those folks a lot of the time are people who know stuff, and most of the time I would hope are pretty approachable and friendly and excited to talk to you. And so if you start making those connections with folks in a capacity in which you are, showing yourself to be somebody who cares, I think that can help a lot. But generally speaking, just try to make connections with other humans who are doing stuff that you are excited about, and express that excitement and curiosity to them, and talk about the things that you're wanting to learn and study and thinking about. And hopefully you can make those kinds of human connections that way. But I don't know that there's one set path. I think it can be different for every person and every group of people.
Yeah, speaking from somebody who is a mentee, I'd never really reached out to somebody formally and said, hey, will you be my mentor? It was really a conversation of just like engaging people who had similar interests that I know are much smarter than me, and continuing those conversations with those people. And I think that's really helpful. And you can build relationships there, kind of like what you're saying. It's a relationship building thing where you create it's a friendship, and it goes both. It's a two-way street to have people where you are learning from them and they might be learning from you. And I think that's really what a good mentorship is, in my opinion. I mean, there are formal mentorships. I've never done anything like that, but I see a lot of people in chat talking about Marcus J. Carey and his mentorship that he gives people, and that's another wonderful person to reach out to. But I think that it's really finding someone who has energy emotionally to invest in a person and just be a friend.
Totally. And it's a really good point about mentorship being a two-way street, because I promise that the people, and this is the case at work, which is also a place to find mentors actually, which is not something that either of us mentioned, but
Right.
Or at cons or out in the community or wherever, like the people who you are learning from, I promise are also learning from you, because people who are newer bring newer perspectives that maybe the people who are more senior hadn't considered. And you learn a ton from teaching other people. I would argue that teaching other people is actually one of the best ways to learn. One thing I do really disagree with that you said though, is that people who are in mentor positions are smarter than their mentees. That's not true. And because there's A, I just don't think that's true. And B, there's lots of different kinds of smart, right? There's lots of different kinds of knowledge. All of us have that, and we're all bringing that with us wherever we go. So don't sell your own level of knowledge short, and that goes for you, and that also goes for you watching.
Yes, definitely. I say that somewhat in jest, but somewhat in they're people that I look up to would be a better way to say smarter than me. And I think that's a great place to find a mentor. And like you said, work. In my experience, I worked with some amazing people. I come from higher ed, and there were people there who literally laid the groundwork for the internet at the university. And they were brilliant. And I'd ask them a networking question, and they would just explain in great detail and share. And like, there's so many people like that who want to share their knowledge, and they just want to share that experience, and being willing just to ask and not be afraid. It can be scary to reach out to somebody. I think that's a big thing that people deal with. I know I dealt with that. I was like, nobody's gonna want to talk to me. Like I'm just nobody. And like, but when you do that, you realize, oh, we're just all people. We're all people, and we can talk to each other. And it can seem scary at first, but it works out really well. I promise. And there are people who want to be engaged with. And if you show a genuine interest and treat them like a person, they're going to want to share information with you. It's wonderful.
That's a really, really good advice. And I will say that like one thing that has happened to me sometimes is that people will express that they're afraid to talk to me because they feel like they don't have anything to contribute or anything like that. And I want to promise anybody who feels that way that that's not true. You do have things to contribute. And I can't speak for everybody everywhere, but personally, I'm really excited to talk to folks who are newer to stuff, who are more junior, who have like ideas about what it is that they have seen, that they want to see, because we need that kind of like, you know, fresh blood and new perspectives and people coming in to shake things up and question the existing kind of set of ideas, because the set of ideas that we have isn't necessarily working super well. So don't be afraid to reach out for people, and don't feel like you don't have something to contribute, because you 120% do.
Absolutely. I think that if there's anybody in this conference who knows a little bit about InfoSec, you are in a great position to share with people who know nothing. You have the ability to say, this is what information security is. Even if that's all you know what it is. You're sharing with somebody and you are teaching, and you're doing the thing that we're talking about. You don't have to know everything to share. I mean, I remember being in my first year as an information security analyst, and in like the first 2 months of just being on the job, I had somebody reach out and be like, hey, you want to come speak to my college class about what it's like to work in information security? And I'm like, I can. I've only been doing it for like 2 months. But the thing is, like, people see you as someone who knows things, and you have that ability to share. And I think that all of you should take that to heart. And really remember that when you feel like, I don't know enough. You do. Like, do you know how to open up the command prompt and send a ping? Like, you might think, wow, that's silly. Anybody could do that. And it's like, not everybody knows that. So you have something to offer.
It's really true. And like, you may feel like your knowledge is like basic and everybody knows it, but I promise you that not everybody knows it. And we shouldn't assume that. And we should be able to own the level of knowledge that we do have, and the skills that we do have, because those are real. And it's good to, like, you know, especially when you're new and coming up and things are hard and you're learning and you're in the learning curve, it's like, hey, I made this much progress. Hey, I do know these things. Like, that can be really helpful, I think, in like keeping yourself sane in that process. And it's also important to know that like I would love to hear the perspective of somebody who's been working in information security for a couple of months, for example, or somebody who's like just learning about containers or Kubernetes, and like what the pain points are for them in learning, what they're having trouble finding in the documentation, what it is that they're like not quite understanding super well, because as people get more senior, they forget this stuff so fast. Like, you don't think you will, but you absolutely do. And like, it's and we don't necessarily always get the perspective of folks who are newer. So for me, I'm really excited about that when I get that. It's really valuable. And if that's your perspective, know that it's valuable and know that you bring value.
Yeah, definitely. When I worked at the university, we had student employees who would rotate, and they would come in with a fresh new perspective. And I'd be like, hey, if the documentation sucks, like, straight up just be like, this sucks, and we can fix it together. And when we had a new information security analyst, when she started, she always felt bad for asking questions. I'm like, no, you're doing this exactly how you should be. So I encourage all of you to ask questions too. Like, it's wonderful to have somebody who is inquisitive, because it also helps us as people who are the one asking the question, because we're forced to explain things in a way we might not have had to explain it before, and it helps us to help others. Yeah.
And it helps us when we answer questions about stuff, it helps us gain a greater understanding of that thing too, because it isn't actually the case that literally anybody knows everything, or that somebody you admire knows everything, or that somebody who is more senior knows everything. Like, they really don't. And you have to continuously learn in this field. This is not a field in which coasting is good, because technology changes so fast. And so you want to be continuously learning. And if you're not feeling like a noob on some level, you're kind of doing it wrong, because you're not learning enough. You know, like, it's good to stretch and grow, and to know that we always get to, and frankly have to, keep learning in this field. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask questions. It's okay. It's not only okay, it's good to ask questions. It's good for the people you're asking questions of, and frankly, it's good for you, because if you're afraid to ask questions because you're afraid of looking dumb, then you just keep not knowing the thing. And
Yep.
asking questions is a good way to learn the thing, because otherwise you're just going to keep not knowing it. And then the more senior you get, the more embarrassed you're going to be about asking. So you have a superpower as somebody who's newer. Ask all the questions you can. And really keep
Exactly.
doing that. You don't have to stop doing it when you get more senior, but
Yes.
yeah, don't be afraid to do it. It's actually really good.
Yes. I totally agree. Never stop asking questions like that. Curiosity is a huge part of information security and what like it is, you know, and I think it's just tech in general, having the curiosity to figure out how things work, why something does a thing, or what happens if I plug this thing into that thing. You know, and just being willing to experiment and being willing to fail, and having an environment that is safe to fail. Like, I think today is a great place to try a CTF and mess up and have people help you, you know, and like there's tons of places where you can do that. I mean, there's going to be people here talking about how to build a home lab or how to set up virtual machines and that sort of thing. That's a great place to try things as well. Earlier, you talked about just having to set up an entire pipeline with what you had. And I think that a lot of people can do something like that, where they just use what they have to learn and take steps to try new things. And yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And like, yeah, like they said, like, don't be afraid to try things. Don't be afraid to fail. It's okay. That's how we learn. And we're all here to learn. And in this event that's specifically dedicated to learning, like, take this time to experiment, to ask questions, to be curious, because it's a great place and time to do it. And then take that and then keep doing it after this.
Exactly. And you have some great people to reach out to here at the event. We have speakers here who I'm sure would be thrilled to hear from you and get your questions. And you can follow up with them. I know I mean, I can't speak for all the organizers, but I know as an organizer, I will do whatever I can to answer your questions. And if I don't know something, I will tell you, because dear Lord, I don't want to answer things I don't know. And this is just a great community and place to start that. And I'm really excited that you all have decided to be here. Yeah, I'm still blown away at this whole thing. It's surreal to me.
I'm really happy that it's happening, and I'm really happy that you're putting it on.
Yeah.
And thank you, everybody who's watching, for being here and taking that time. I know it's the weekend and there's a million other things you could be doing, so thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Yeah, so we have another talk in this track starting up at 9, and looking at my schedule, that is going to be, oh my goodness, sorry, I have so many tabs open, and I don't use Google Sheets like ever, or like Google Drive stuff, and it has been a mess. The other organizers can tell you how bad I am at Google Drive. Oh, okay, so our next talk in track 1 is Icon has Linux, which is going to be really fun. It's going to be about using Linux, how to set up Linux, and it'll be a really great time. If you don't know anything about Linux, this is a place to learn. And in track 2, we have Talk the Talk, information security jargon. So that'll be a great talk as well. If you're like, what do all these things mean? What they said a lot of words that I don't quite understand during their conversations, or you see things that are posted and you just don't know. This is gonna be a great talk for you. So we're gonna get those rolling here shortly. Yeah. Again,
Can I say one more thing?
Yes.
I just want to say that you person who's watching, you person who's new, there's nothing about the people who you're looking to, either looking to and they're speaking today, looking to on the internet, like there's nothing about those folks that is particularly special that isn't also special about you. And it doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter what you've been told, you can do that thing. You are capable of it, and you should know that, you should own that, because you are, it's not even that you can be awesome, you are already awesome. And I'm really excited to see what kinds of awesome things you do and bring out into the world.
Awesome. Thank you so much.